So I'm Robert. I'm an addict. Hey, boys and girls. So we got a real honor tonight. It's an honor for me to introduce my friend Jason. He was one of the first people I met in recovery, and he had 9 months clean. And at that time, it was like, how the heck do you have 9 months clean? You know, and he says, well, I've been locked up in this treatment center for the last 9 months. So I said, okay, well, that's one way to do it, I guess. But I met him in Penfield, and I shared, you know, whenever I think about him, whenever I share about him, it's always, you know, he was one of the people that was there in the very beginning for me that saved my life. He showed me that he gave me hope that there was a way out of what I was in, what I was trapped in, you know. And, you know, God put him there, I'm sure, I'm absolutely positive. He was somebody that I was able to hear when he shared. And man, we hung out and we enjoyed recovery, and we get to do it again today. And I get to introduce him, and y'all get to hear his story, so y'all get excited, because here's Jason.
All right, my name's Jason, my addict. And I'm from North Georgia. I talk country as hell, so I can tell. My people. You know, I was going through the drawers the other day at the house, and I had these old T-shirts, and I seen a Nagana 2006, 2005, Spirituality is the Key. And I forgot how much these conventions meant to me. And you'll find out why later on in my story. But I'll start off with my family. I come from a good home, a real good home, actually. I mean, I can't. My family were working class people. They didn't use. I wasn't abused by my family anyway. I had an older brother. I had older cousins that I hung out with, and there was a big age difference, 4 to 7 years. And we fought a lot growing up. I was the baby brother, and I was the baby cousin. And I lived in what used to be the country. It was kind of between Dawsonville, Cumming, and Gainesville. It's called Oscarville, and or 2 Mile Creek off Lake Lanier. And I'm actually there now. But I grew up, and you know, I wanted to kind of speak at the meeting we had earlier, but I wanted to save it for when I was speaking. But you know, I didn't really, you know, they were talking about some people, you know, come from an abusive home or come from a home that had a family that used drugs. You know, I didn't have that excuse, you know, but I can remember early on where I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. And I always felt like I always had to prove myself, you know. I had to be the best at everything, you know, to feel good about myself. I mean, I was looking at myself based on how I performed. You know, I had to be the best in football. I had to be the best in school. I had to be the best, you know, baseball player, all that shit. And it was setting me up for failure. I didn't realize, you know. And, you know, I didn't, alcohol was not in my house, but my cousins and my older brother, they were getting it, you know, at 15, 16. So I was, 9 or 10. And we had a neighbor that had a refrigerator out on one of the docks. And he used to store beer in there. And that's kind of my first use. And I can remember taking that beer and putting it in the creek and to keep it cold by the house, because the refrigerator was a long way. And I can remember the first time I drank a whole one, I didn't really like the taste, but for some reason I, felt okay about myself, you know. I thought I did. And I can remember And I don't know, I don't remember how old I was. I was like maybe 10 or 11 at this time. And keep in mind, this is coming from a home. My dad's a minister, So there's no, and we can down religion or whatever we want, but my dad lived it, He was for real. I mean, he didn't sit up there and beg money, He wanted you to know his higher power, and he wanted you to have a relationship with him. And I wasn't ready for all that, And I guess I had to prove myself. I was one of them wild ass preacher kids, And so anyway, so there wasn't a lot of dope, it wasn't really in my life just yet. I mean, I knew my brother and them might smoke a fatty or something every now and then, but it wasn't prevalent. I wasn't around it. But this addict found a way to find it, and didn't even know what it was, So we'll skip on along to, I was working probably around 12 or 13, splitting wood, landscaping, whatever. I had a friend in Dawsonville. He had plenty of work for me to do, and he had a lot of older workers that worked for him, and they were into all kinds of stuff. And so that's kind of when I got introduced to it. And I'd always played ball, but it got to the point where I could get out of school and go to work, and I was around all these older people who had what I wanted, And it just started out with these people would go to the store and buy me, a case, and I'd hide that shit, It started out with, I'd get a bag, and that's all that I thought that I was going to get involved with. But I didn't realize at the time that was driving everything I wanted to do. I was throwing. At 16 years old, up until then, all I was looking forward to was whenever I could get off and drink a beer, or get off and smoke a fatty, and that was what was driving my life. It wasn't about scoring a touchdown or doing good in class, And I grew up, hunting and fishing. I loved a deer hunt. I loved a coon hunt we did, growing up. I loved to, fish. I grew up on that lake, And it got when we would go fishing, it was more important to make sure I had something than actually catch fish, And my parents were very naive to it. My dad didn't know the difference between pot or heroin. He knew dope was dope. And my mom was a school teacher, and they're from chicken farmers from Gainesville. My dad, he was from farmers, and they didn't really know much about what I was into. Not like it's out now, And they didn't know that in our area, in Cumming and Dawsonville, when moonshining went out, crystal meth came in. And this ain't the problem they got now. This was back in the 70s and the 80s. It was, they had truck drivers running all week long. And I knew a lot of these people. I grew up around them, and you didn't even know. It was some of the people that I went to school with. It was their parents, truck drivers. Anyway, I for the newcomer, I'm going to qualify what it was like for me. So I started getting more into other stuff, and I worked with some people, and they pretty much could get everything. And I worked in a plant. I'd get out of school early, and eventually I just quit football. I'd played since I was, and it's my favorite sport. I grew up a bulldog my whole life. Was seeing Herschel Walker play. That was my hero at one time. But anyway, so to get back to the powerlessness, that I had. So I had a chance to, finish high school, either move up in this company I was with, or, go to college. And, I tried to do both. And to tell you where my mind was at, I started majoring in chemistry and pharmacy. Anyway, it really didn't work well for me. I mean, because I really wasn't much of a dealer. I hear that in here a lot. They fronted me enough one time, and I disappeared for 2 weeks, and I had half the people that I hung around looking for me. I just wasn't somebody who could, could move it. Once I had what I needed, I'd go to Dawsonville Forest and stay by myself for days. Anyway, that's where it took me. But anyway, I got introduced one night. I was with some friends, and we were on a lot of downers, and somebody. All I know is there was a couple of some people, some older kids were there, and I was 16, and I can remember. I remember saying, I can't even get up, I can't move. And I remember them saying they could move me. And this is the kind of people I was hanging out with. Next thing you know, man, they were pulling something out of my arm. And then I was just shaking. And next thing you know, I was cleaning their house, And then and went out. And then I went out and started working on, I tightened every lug nut in my truck, and running to the back of that lady's car, I was so fucked up. And the next day I could do it either arm, it was fucked up. But anyway, and there was no God in this, and when this was going on, with somebody that had been to church almost every Sunday of his life, there was no God. My God was that dope. So anyway, that kind of sped things up once I got involved with that, and I had several DUIs, I like to drink too. I had several possession charges, not big ones though. It was just like a misdemeanor. I don't even think they'd charge you with it today with misdemeanor marijuana, but I still tried to maintain with that, but once it got a hold of me, the needle did, and I couldn't control it, and it's all I wanted, and it went that way for where I got hanging out with some bad people, and they basically wanted me to cook with them, or they didn't want me around because they knew they couldn't trust me. I got into where I couldn't make enough money, at work. I couldn't sell it, and so I got into stealing stuff, and I got in with a crew that were professionals. Whatever the man needed, they would go in the mall in broad daylight and get that shit and walk out with it. And I wasn't good enough to do that. But, I gave them a ride, so I get it done. Back in the late 80s, there was no cell phones. So the man's unit and all them guys communicated with scanners and CBs. And there was a brand new, I think Bearcat was big back then, and Bearcat two-way radios. And the man said he needed one of them, and I swear, one of them girls I was hanging out with, she went in there and got one from the case from Radio Shack and got out with it. And that's the kind of mentality. I did do a lot of watchdogging the house, like sitting up in a tree with a .44 Magnum in my hand, and waiting for somebody that they said might be the law, not realizing that half Hall County was the law anyway. And they used to scare me with that shit. I got my badge. Where's yours? And some of them are serious. But anyway, it progressed on to the point where one of the guys I was with one night said, "Let me out right here." And, I'd been up, I don't even know, but it was a long time. And he said, "Let me out right here." And we were in kind of a nicer part of the neighborhood. And I said, "All right," and I come out to get him, and law was everywhere, And I kept circling, trying to come back and get this guy. And about the fifth time, the law said, "What the hell do you want?" They pulled me over, and then I had all this tweaker shit in my truck. They shined their flashlight in there, and I got half the shit in my truck was took apart, and they're like, "Well, what do you keep circling around here?" And they threw me down. They knew something was up, so they took me to this house, and I didn't even know which house it was. And then people said, "Is that him?" And they said no. And I sat there and watched. And there was a man there. His arm was just covered in blood and bandages. And the guy that I let out there had woke him up and stabbed him. And they were looking for him. And these were. So I looked down whenever I seen him. I couldn't play that innocent face. I looked down. I knew what had happened as soon as I looked down. And they said, "Mr. Hogan, we know you were involved with this somehow. You need to go ahead and tell us." And I was from the school at that time that, you don't say nothing about anything. Some of the people I was dealing with, I didn't want, because they knew my family. And so I played that. And I basically just said I didn't know anything. And they had a picture of the guy the next day in the Times. It looked just like him. And and they were wanted. And come to find out, the guy had been out of prison, 2 weeks for like an armed robbery and an assault. And that was. I can remember that as plain as day, being at my man's house, and that guy coming over, and they wouldn't have nothing to do with him. And I felt sorry for him. I was on that shit, acting crazy, and I said, what do you need, and we went off, and come to find out, man, this guy was in on all kind of stuff around town. But they kept questioning me, and they said, we don't want you, we just want him. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't have any really evidence on me. It was all circumstantial. But the last time they finally caught him, and he tried to commit suicide in the jail. And when he did, that's when they interrogated him. And he told them I was in on all these damn robberies around town. And all of a sudden there was a I talked to somebody about it, and they said, "You better lawyer up. If you're not going to work with them, you need to lawyer up, do something, because they're going to try to take you down." And sure enough, they tried to put 2 midnight burglaries on me. And their deal they want to do was, if you work with us, you get out of all this. We just want to know where it comes from. Where he's at, where's he at? Where were y'all getting the shit from? And so I didn't. Well, come to find out that when I finally did go to court, my lawyer grabbed me and took me in the back room and said, "What in the fuck are you doing dealing with this guy?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You know how many felonies that they've pinched him for?" And it come to find out the dope dealer was going to testify that he'd seen me with a guy. So I didn't really have a way out of it. So I ended up getting the First Offenders Act, and I did some time in Forsyth County. I didn't really make it to a federal, a state prison system, but I did time in Hall County and time in Forsyth County, and they gave me whatever that maximum probation is. And so let's rewind. Before all this happened, I went to Penfield, and that's where I was there. I was supposed to be there 6 weeks, and they kept me for 9 months. And they put me on voluntary staff out there. I met a lot of good people there, but I'll just be honest with you, I was there because I didn't want to go to prison. I wanted it, but I didn't want it. Not enough to stay clean. God, kind of what I want to talk about in this story. I mean, I heard about him. It was just like when you hear a preacher or you hear somebody talk about God, but it don't pertain to you. It's just kind of one ear out the other. And then I left there, went to a halfway house in Atlanta. Stayed there for like 6 months. Had all these people, conned, and they were going to show up in court and testify for me, and they did. And I ended up getting that First Offenders Act. I did do a little bit of, jail time, but I didn't do anything serious. But the thing about a First Offenders Act, if you violate your probation, they give you the full sentence. So before I even went to court on this, I ended up getting another DUI and a possession charge. But it wasn't. That's kind of one of the reasons how I got introduced to the program before even Penfield. Was they said, well, you can get out of jail if you'll go get this piece of paper signed. Everybody was in there for violation of probation. So, I tried to play their game. I tried, drinking 5 gallons of water, before I showed up, pissing on a Band-Aid, all that shit, man. I got called every time. Anyway, there was no God. There was no God in all this. So I finally, I got all my court dates behind me, and I was supposed to be on probation. And my parents are letting me move back in with them until I can figure out what I'm going to do. And I was always working. Until the end, I always had some kind of job. I'm a landscaper, construction. I always made just enough, for gas money or, to get something fronted to me. But I remember that morning, I went out on a date and with somebody, and we stopped by somebody I know's house, and I think I had a year. I picked up a year at the Hawk Club, and I was going for the wrong reasons, and I was like, you know what, I'm not getting pissed for another month, and they had some, and it started the whole thing back over. And next thing you know, I was in the bathroom, and at my house, and I'd been up all night, and I couldn't see what I was doing, so it was taking me forever. And I can remember my dad walking in there. He didn't know what to do, He don't even. I can remember him walking in there. He was scared to death. Was I ODing? What was wrong with me, And I can remember going to work. And then all of a sudden my sponsor showing up to work. And I went to J&J to get all these eggs, man, for the store I was working at. And when I seen my sponsor, I dropped every damn one of them. And so anyway, he's like, you don't live here anymore. You're not going to put your parents through this anymore. You don't live here. And he said, we can go talk to your probation officer. Or, you can do whatever you want to do, or you can go to a treatment center. So I went back to Penfield. And I snuck out and left. And made it for a little while. And I don't know, I was with some guys. And a different kind of dope had come out at that time. And I didn't know it was that much different than, old school. And next thing you know, man, I was, it put me out. And I was flopping, and somebody dropped me off at the Northeast Georgia Medical Center. And all I know is I woke up, they had shot me up with Ativan and said my amphetamine count was off the charts. And I didn't even know you could OD on amphetamines like that. Anyway, I went to Laurelwood, and I went back to Penfield again. They took me, believe it or not. And I stayed there, and I went to Augusta. And I was in Augusta for almost a year. I stayed with a guy that was big into AA, and he let some guys that didn't know where to go stay with him. He was a real good guy, but we took advantage of him. Once I started working again. Once I got enough money in my pocket, I met a girl on the program. We're gonna save each other. I had like 3 months. She had like 30 days, you know. And, healthy relationship here. And she had a lot of money, and I mean this is the first time that I used, and money was not an object. You know, I'd never been at that point. You know, from Forsyth County, you know, redneck crankhead. You know, there was never. But she had money, and that wasn't down there. It was dope from the projects, and I got strung out on that, and it was a $1,500 a day habit. And you know, I was clean for a little while, and she went back out. You know, and I was going to NA, and I had a sponsor, and you know, I was trying. I thought I was trying, but I put myself in an environment where I set myself up to fail. I couldn't stay clean. And, you know, I hadn't talked to my family or anybody in a while, you know, and I hadn't seen my parents. And for about 6 months, man, I mean, we went through probably, I don't know, several $100,000. And, you know, and then one day, man, I went and looked in the mirror, man, and I mean, I'm 290 pounds right now. And when I looked in the mirror, I was like 160.
Wow.
And I didn't, and I also had it wasn't just a want to habit anymore, it was also a need to. She was big into like pills, you know, so I was coming off a lot of different things, and I called my mama, and I said, Mama, can I come home? And she said, you can't come home unless you get yourself in a place, you know. You need to find a place and you can come home for Christmas. And I called her, and there was a place that I'd heard about in Penfield called The Farm. It was down in Marcus, Georgia. And it was a 6-month program, and it was a shithole. I mean, it was just trailers. I mean, they'd let it go down. It was state run. We grew vegetables. We took care of animals. I mean, my only stipulations of getting in there was if I detoxed. Well, I lied. I said I didn't want to detox. I didn't have time, and I tried to make. And so I did what I needed to do. And when I got there, they let me in, and somebody gave a good word for me. Bryant Miller from Penfield gave a good word for me and let me in. And then they got me in. And I can remember those first 30 days there. This was back in '98. Those first 30 days there, that was probably the worst I've ever felt. I was coming off opiates. I was coming off crack cocaine. I was coming off amphetamines. And it was all coming out, you know, and I had no motivation. I had no endorphins left. I was shot the fuck out, you know. So anyway, the depression started coming in at about 30 days, you know, and there was these people that, I mean, down in South Georgia, they loved to dove and dove hunt, and they love quail hunting, and there was somebody out shooting. I don't know if it was skeet shooting or not. And I can remember this is the first time I had this thought. I was gonna wait till these people went to work, because I would go out and get away from everybody and sit and ask God for help. And I was gonna go get that gun. I was gonna shoot myself. I mean, I'd already had it planned out. I didn't think I was gonna make it through this, you know. So one day before I did it, I was reading. I think it was the How and Why, or it may have been the 12 and 12. I don't know. I was trying to read the steps, and I was trying to read steps 1, 2, and 3, and I just kept asking God to help. And I had to forget all the shit that I learned as a child. I was like, man, everything that I learned about the Bible, you know, what I learned in church, I had to throw it out the window because it didn't work. My higher power was dope. You know, and that's what I worship. You know, that's what I killed myself for. And I just kept saying help. And I don't know what happened, but I did say a prayer, and I asked it in God's name. And it was like something come over me, and I can't really explain what happened. But it let me know it loved me no matter what I'd done, and I couldn't do nothing to earn it. And when that happened, I didn't want to kill myself. And I started having hope. I stuck out that program for 6 months. I got a sponsor, and I met some good people in Americus. Doreen O was there, and she had like 37 years in NA. She died not too long ago. She was a probation officer from Washington, D.C., and she was kind of my NA sponsor. And then then there was only one NA meeting a week down there, so the other meetings I went to was in AA. And a lot of people talk about the OFF, but I don't have a problem with AA. This is where I need to be, but I don't have a problem with AA. I don't curse it, and that's where I needed a meeting. And when I was in there, I was sober. That's how. I had the old timers in there that was like, son, when you in here, you say you sober. And he told me, he said, look, I ain't talking about just from alcohol, because I know you ain't just an alcohol person. If you sober, it's everything. Ain't no wacky backy either, And he told me that, and I listened to them, man, and I was ready, I was willing, and I was ready at this time. And by the way, I had a relationship with a God of my understanding, and it was guiding this thing from then on. In this time, when I was down in Americus, I become GSR of that group. My sponsor was a RCM. We worked the steps. I worked construction, and I worked at a store, and I went back to school at Georgia Southwestern University, and I didn't take pharmacy. I went back to school as believe it or not, a computer major, and I was working in that store. And I'm in this podunk town, and Americus is drying up. There's not a lot going on, And I was going to school during the day, working at night, and I was living in a halfway house, much like the 51s that's in Gainesville. Basically everybody that was there had enough rope to hang themselves. Most people that was in there with me were either using, or they were just there because they were court mandated. My probation officer called me, and he tried to get my probation transferred there, and they said no. They said the guy said, well, where's he living at? The probation officer, and he said he's staying at the Hope House. He said there's more guys in there using than there is out on the street. He said I'm not taking it, so he wouldn't take it. So I served my sentence while I was there, and paid my fines while I was there, and I got off paper while I was in Americas. He said my First Offenders Act took effect, but I tried. That's the first thing I did to buy a gun. It didn't take effect. So I can hunt with a bow if I wanted to hunt. That's just the way it is. But anyway, things started happening. Working those steps, things started happening. I met. One thing I want to mention, before I came to this program, I was raised by rednecks. That's who I used with. That's who raised me. That's who taught me. And being a redneck from North Georgia's got a lot of prejudice, in it. This program opened my mind to other people's way of life, different colors, and it showed me how to love and look at the heart of a person, and not necessarily what they look like or what they do. Because that's what my God does. He looks at the heart. He don't give a shit what you look like, But anyway, things started changing. And I started going to school. And I started working out. That was kind of my stress relief. I couldn't sleep at night. I had no, I'd been either stayed up or put myself to sleep with something, for the past 10 years, And so what I did was started working out. I'd work out even after I would work all day, go to school all day. I still couldn't sleep. I would sit there and stare, and I'd read the book, and I'm ADD. That's the reason I got this thing. I'm still ADD. I think I was ADD before I even started the shit, but my mind races all the time, and it don't slow down, and I can't slow it down, and I can't take, Focalin, Ritalin, any of that stuff, So what I started doing was doing an extended third step prayer, like doing an extended 11th step prayer, and start slowing stuff down and asking God, is this the right decision I'm making? And instead of just turning my will in my life over, they told me in those meetings down there, you pray for the son of a bitches that everybody make you use. That's what they told me. So the boss that was getting on my nerves, or my roommate, and God knows when you're in treatment, so your roommates will drive you freaking crazy. I learned to pray for them, and it might not have did anything for them, but something peaceful happened inside of me, and that's how I started doing stuff. And then, all of a sudden, I hadn't really dated anybody when I did it. I had like maybe a year clean, and I met this pretty little blonde that I didn't know was going to show up tonight, and we've been married 19 years. She's not one of us, but she was what I needed. I want to emphasize, for me, God puts the right people in your life for you to stay clean if you want to open your eyes and look at it. It might not be the person you want, but He puts the people in your life, and that's how we stay clean. I mean, my God talks through the people I see in the rooms whenever they share, But anyway, we started dating. She changed pretty much everything, except I was scared because I didn't want to screw it up, and I didn't know how to do it. Well, it wasn't much longer. She was pregnant, So, both of us. She was an 18-year-old kid at the time. I was 24, 25, and her daddy and her parents were not real happy about my age, and she was in her senior year at high school. She was smart enough to go to college first year, there while she was in high school, and everything kind of started focusing on her, and I had to watch and keep my program at the forefront, because love is a powerful emotion, and it's more than I can handle sometimes, and so I had to really work on but kind of what I want to get to at this point in my recovery is all the decisions that I was making. I would talk to my higher power like I'm talking to y'all, and I would cuss at him like I'm talking to y'all, and I would tell him, is this the right person? I don't want to go through. I don't think I'm going to make it again. And I would, my sponsor was like, what the hell are you doing? They said, this is the first time you're doing okay. You're in school, and I said, I think she's the one. And we ended up getting married, and she took time off from school, and she was pregnant when we got married, and I don't ever do anything the right way, but anyway, I finished school and I worked at night, and I was in a store one day, and and a frat brother from the computer science department, and I'm not no frat boy, come up to me and said, man, I had this programming class we got this shop over here, you want to work here? And I said, yeah, hell yeah, I'm about to go work on a roof, I'll try it, and that's how God works. That's a God thing right there. How in the hell did, these are people that all they do is drink beer and smoke pot all day, and I'm somebody in recovery from North Georgia, and they come up and ask me, do you want to work? So I got my career started there. I met, my wife there. I got a son on the way. All this stuff's happening because I got clean, you know. So anyway, I got certified and I got involved. I got involved with all that, and I finished school and I got all the certifications, and I had job offers in Atlanta. And me and my wife had went home several times, and coming to Cumming now or Gainesville now is like going to freaking LA compared to South Georgia. And my wife was like, this is where I want to be at. So I found a job up here, and so I took that job, and so I'm like traveling with this company, this IT company, and we did EMR software, and I did all the server support, and I put them in, and most of the people that I work with, a lot of the engineers, they're atheists. They're a lot like I used to be, agnostic. If you can't like explain God, if you can't analyze and find what you need from God, there is no God. They had that kind of mentality. Not bad people. Actually, real good people. But just I forgot who I was when I got back to Gainesville, Georgia. I was like, man, I don't want to go back to the Hawk Club, man. I got 5 years clean now. Doing good. This was in 2004, and so we were out in California, and I was doing some training out there, and they were all wanting to go to the strip club and go and party, and I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna hang back, And the guy said, I'll hang back with you, and all of a sudden he pulls out a big fatty, and I hit it, and the whole thing started all over again. The whole thing of how am I going to get more? Where's it at? Can I get some? Can I take some home with me? The whole thing started over immediately. And something I didn't tell you about my wife is I told her when we got married, if you find some dope, leave. I don't want you or Tyler to see what I turn into, because I'm the type person, and I'm satisfied everybody in this room is the type person, or you wouldn't be here. Is once it starts, there ain't nothing gonna stop it. It's either a jail or it's jails, institutions, or death. And that's all I think about, and that's all I care about. And so that's kind of where I started, and so we were. I was playing the game good, and I'd lost that conscious contact with God. I wasn't doing the prayer and meditation. I was doing it in the steps, anymore. I was just like, well, we'll go to church, and we'll just be a normal family. I'm not one of those, I'm not an addict, And then once it started back over, I didn't get to my drug of choice because of my wife, because my wife left when she found the bag. And I don't know if you noticed, but everything else before, I lost myself, and I didn't really have a lot to lose. My addiction didn't allow me to have a relationship, not one worth of shit, So I lost everything at that point in time, and I went back to a meeting, and went to the Hawk Club, and I can remember walking in there that day. It was July 9th. 2005, and I remember walking in a meeting, and I wasn't even supposed to be. It was a way up meeting, and George Argo was the one freaking was the one leading the meeting. And George like, come on in here, and the whole thing. So, and I love George. Don't get me wrong, I love George. But I got started, I started the whole thing back over. But I tell you, man, I remember talking to a member, and he's not here tonight. I think he's doing a workshop tomorrow. And I said, you know how I'm feeling, man? My wife just left. She's got my kids. She's going to school down in South Georgia. And he's like, yeah, you can't eat. Your stomach's knotting up right now. He sat there and described exactly what I was going through. And I said, how do you know, man? He said, man, my wife left me when I was in here, And we just hit it off, man. And I don't know if any of y'all remember that meeting back from 2005 to 2010. Man, there was a lot of old timers in that meeting, and there were several people in there with 20 something years, and they had a strong NA message. And I didn't even see them even go to AA after I started back in that meeting. I called my sponsor that I had at Stepping Stone, and he's like, "Yeah, man, if you want to come here, we can work the steps together." And we started all over. And I sit there and was working a 4th and 5th step when he died from brain cancer. And he died with 25 years, but I can remember him sitting there begging for a spoonful of morphine because he was in so much pain. And he didn't want to take it, And this is a man that his whole life was about recovery. All the treatment centers he'd worked at, he was the best counselor there. He never made any money. He never had a nice car. He was very involved in the Biscayne and Naba down off Claremont Road. And we worked the steps together. And he's the one who used to tell me about going to NA meetings and seeing like Elton John and Greg Allman and all the Atlanta meetings. But, I guess I just broke their anonymity, but hell, we're all addicts, right? Anyway, I love Steve, man. And when he died, man, part of me died with him because I knew he would always be there, But we did get through the steps. And this time when I did my 4th step, I got out the stuff that I needed to get out. I had a lot of resentments build up from when I was picked on by my older cousins and brothers, and when I had to learn how to fight when I was real young, and I hadn't let that shit go. I had to kind of, and I know y'all ain't no different than me, man, because I had dreams about setting up a deer stand about 6 miles away, and well, not 6 miles, maybe 600 yards. When they come out on that porch, taking them out. I had some sick shit in my head, and I had to get rid of them resentments, man. That's where this disease took me, and I didn't even get back to my drug of choice, and the whole thing started over. And I'll tell you, when that happened, the one thing I didn't learn the first time around was I didn't have perseverance. I looked at all the old timers when I came back in the room. And I seen that NA was a part of their life no matter how long they've been clean. They didn't graduate. I learned real quick, this shit ain't going away. The God of my understanding, He told me this is how you stay clean. You can come see me on Sunday if you want to, but NA is how you going to stay clean. And I did a lot of, and I'm just as good a relationship with him as I feel like anybody you'll see in there, I was talking to my partner a while ago. When I'm talking about my partner, I'm talking about my higher power. And I wanted, the biggest thing that I could get from what he was trying to tell me to say was that it's open for everybody. It's open for everybody. It don't make a fuck. What you look like, what you've done, how bad your addiction got, what you did to people in the past, it's there, And if you tap into that power, it'll change your life. And the steps, man, are a roadmap. This is the easiest way to do it. The steps, man. Those steps, there's magic in them, And it taught me a way where no matter what happens, the old timers told me, they said, be a point in time where the only thing that comes between you and your next use is your higher power. You won't be able to get in touch with your sponsor. You won't be able to get in touch with somebody. You better have something. And it don't really matter what it is, It don't have to be defined. As long as it's loving and you feel like it's there. And I can remember early on in Americas, I was working at that store, and I can remember a man coming in there, and he didn't know me from nobody. And I can remember he put something in my hand, and he said, "Hey man, you want to hold this for me?" And it was a $300 cookie. And I started shaking. And I handed it back to him, and I went to the bathroom in that gas station, and I prayed, and I said, God, take this from me. I don't want to do this. I don't want it to start over again. And he did. This shit's powerful. It's real. It works. And, this program, man, the friends that I've met in here, man, I've went through, my grandmother was like my mother, man. I call her mama. She died when I was in here. I made it through it. My grandfather died. I went, I had a cousin, man, that died. He OD'd on heroin. And I tried to get him in this program, but I've learned that, some people don't hit a bottom. Some people just die, And, and I was close. We were like brothers growing up. And I couldn't save him, man. I've realized in this program, I can't save people. They've got to work their program. They got to want this thing like I did. That second time around when I come in here, it was either I was going to get clean and stay clean, or you was going to send me to GMHI. I don't even think it's even open anymore. But in Milledgeville, y'all know what I'm talking about. But so I continue. I got involved with my home group. I took a service position, and I cannot say how much service will keep you clean. When you come in those rooms and you hate yourself and you're so selfish that you don't feel like you're worth and doing something for somebody else, which is sweeping the floor, making the coffee, hugging the newcomer, picking up coffee cups after me, picking up cigarette butts. To tell you, whenever I came around, you could still smoke in the rooms. It hadn't been that long ago, damn it. But I was wanting to touch on getting older in the rooms. It's weird, man. It's real weird. Like I look at the '90s, and I'm thinking, that was right after high school. Well, that's 30 years ago. And it seemed like it was yesterday. I graduated in '92, man. It seemed like it was just like 5 years ago, And it was like when I was out there and I was caught up in addiction, time was so slow, And now it's like whenever I'm trying to get my shit together, it's just like it's 100 miles an hour. And next thing you know, man, my Tyler's, he's 18 now. He's 17. I got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they keep growing up. And I'm trying to balance this thing and make meetings and be involved in the program and sponsor people, but I also don't want my kids to think, if I'm at a meeting every night, it's no different to them if I'm at the dope man's every night, So I'm having to ask my higher power, how do I balance this thing, what do I do? And, I have to pray. I have to pray that I be the father and the husband that God will have me be. Because there is no manual in basic text, that tells me how to be a good father or a good husband, But it all starts with getting clean. But there's a conscience that I have now. I know when I'm doing shit wrong, man. And I can't hide it no more. That shit, you feel that stuff now. And when you're dishonest or you're taking advantage of somebody, I have to do 10 steps. And I have to admit when I'm wrong, I can't hold resentments. That shit gets me high. But this is the best program. This program saved my life. This program brought me back to my higher power. And if you follow those steps, I feel like you can walk through anything. And be happy. That's all I wanted in the first place, was be okay in my own skin. And I never was. And I always felt like I was different. And I always felt like I had to prove myself. And it's funny because anybody that knows me in that group, probably the first 10 years, man, I was there, I didn't really talk a lot. I still don't really talk a lot, not in meetings. I mean, I try to share what I can to the newcomer. I try to sponsor people, but I don't know, man. It's different. It's like when I first came into NA in 93, 94, the first time I got introduced to meeting, most of the people that I met were like, I don't know, they had tattoos, but they were gel tats, or they come back from like the war or something, from Vietnam. Now, hell, people get clean in 6 months. They got a fucking sleeve, you know. and that's okay, you know. Y'all are my people, you know. I mean, I can go to an NA. I've been to NA meetings in California. I've been to NA meetings in Texas, North Carolina, Florida, and you know what? I always felt at home. You know, and if you come to a meeting and you know, I was talking about earlier that, you know, I don't want to share because I'm afraid I know what they think. Hey, we're all addicts. You know, I mean, get that shit out. You know, and sometimes you do need to take the cotton, you know, out of your ears and put it in your mouth. But you know, our people's changing. Coming in, I mean, the court system's really helped that out. But my take is on that. If there's a desire to stop using, I need to share the NA way. I need to carry the message to the next suffering addict. You know, and that's how it was carried to me. Because if I look back, when I first came in here, I didn't want to quit using. You know, I stuck around and the miracle happened. You know, and I think I wanted to quit, but I didn't want to do what it took to quit. You know, and I was kind of at a place where if I didn't use, or if I did use, I couldn't be happy. You know. I don't know, Nagana 2019, shit. It just seems like, I don't know, man. It's like it's been a long trip since like 2006, you know. But, you know, where did I mess up? Let me go back to, okay, if I look at all the stuff that I did, and the bad choices I made, if you look at a lot of the bad choices I made, it was like at the wrong, I mean, I made the exact worst decision I could make at that time. It's like we make the exact wrong decision at that time. And you know, for me, if I look back at a lot of the stuff I did, if anybody would have did the stuff that I did to myself, I'd kill them. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I can be mad at the judge. I can be mad, you know, at the law. I can be mad at the dope dealer. I can be mad at somebody I was in a relationship with. But if I really look at it today, most of it's my part, you know. If it wasn't for the crooked ass law, man, I might be still out there, you know. I mean, I wouldn't have said that probably 15 years ago, but it's true. You know, they saved my life. They were a higher power at that time. They did for me what I couldn't do for myself, you know. And it's funny, I did a second step off an old timer second step guide not too long ago. It was kind of the first time I ever looked at it that way. My sponsor got me going right back through the steps again, man. And you know, because I feel like you never quit growing, you never can quit using the spiritual principles on those steps. And you know, the step 2 wasn't about finding God or some supreme being. It was finding a power greater than myself. The program of Narcotics Anonymous, that sponsor, that old timer, or that guy that's got 2 days that says something that made sense to me that day. That was a higher power. That was a power greater than myself, you know. And you know, it's step 3, man. I mean, I changed that around, you know, to take my will in my life. You know, I changed it around now, and I say, you know, take my kid, man. My kid, I don't want him to go down the same path I do. You know, I'm worried about him right now. I turn that over to you. You know, take my boss right now. He's pissing me off. You know, I turn that over to you. You know. I mean, I've learned to turn stuff over and not react in anger. You know, and you know, if I could keep it that way, I probably wouldn't still be here. But you know, if I got to keep working at it. You know, if I was, if I was like my higher power, I wouldn't need NA. You know what I mean? I'm in the care of my higher power. You know, and I can get as sick as I want to. And that's something I was wanting to touch on in here also. You know, there's a lot more stuff as I've got clean that's addictive now that has nothing to do with dope. I can probably fill that hole with money, work, sex, whatever. You know, what I've learned is what I got you. The only way that works for me is these spiritual principles. You know, it's helping the next suffering addict. It's hitting my knees in the morning like I learned in the treatment center a long time ago, and thanking him, you know, at the end of the day that I stay clean. And it's also praying for my kids, you know, because I'm Irish on both sides. I don't really have my parents were teetotalers, so you really don't know if they had this. I don't believe I ever crossed the line. I believe I was born with this shit. I do. And I don't really analyze it because I don't really care the whys and hows of it. I know the solution.
That's right.
You know? So, I like to say I was a lot further along than I am. But it always seems like I should be further along than I am in this program. But it's still one day at a time. It's still the third step. It's still, service work at the group level, area level, whatever you're doing. It's still the same thing that I learned when I first came here to stay clean is the same thing I do now. You know? I love y'all.
Love you,